Alright everybody, so before we get to today's videos regarding Marvel, constant events, and reboots, let me tell you about something. And that is a bunch of Let's Players on Grand Theft Auto 5 Dom is Live 2. Now, if you guys ever caught the CBC Let's Plays that we do here for Grand Theft Auto, these guys do it every single day. Podcasts, interviews, rumors, everything regarding Grand Theft Auto on their channel. So if you guys want all your Grand Theft Auto fix, make sure you check them out. I'll leave the annotation somewhere right here, and let's get to the video. Well. Reboots and events. Let's see what the question was. What do you think about the Marvel Now reboot and the constant events that Marvel does? Are you a little tired out by them all? Tired by all of them. God, I couldn't even read that right. So events are one of those things that they're great when they happen and are meaningful. And what I mean by that is, let's look at a recent example of Marvel's Axis, which I thought was honestly great. I thought it was a great event, inversion of characters. It really established a new status quo in Marvel, which is something that doesn't happen a lot. There was, of course, another event by DC, which was kind of like Forever Evil, the evil guys come through, and this whole event, and events used to be special. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. Is an event when an event used to happen, it used to be meaningful. It used to mean something. And back in the day when an event was happening, you would have months of build up to it, and then the heroes would meet, and it would be a reason. Okay, we got to take out Thanos, right? Here's all the greatest heroes you have, and they're gonna try to do this, and it's gonna be special, and you're gonna want to pick up all the issues because it's meaningful. And at some point, they realized that you can pretty much rip us off as comic book fans. And by that, I mean, if you just mash up heroes and call it an event, we'll buy it. We'll want to buy a tie-in issue because we want to know the story. And I think the last event that actually had meaningful tie-ins was actually Civil War. Now, Civil War was the event that really brought me back into comics. I was interested in reading that and Dark Reign. But you really look at events since then, like Siege, I think, was an event that was awful. They've all been awful. I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. They've all been pretty much awful. Besides Original Sin from Marvel and Access Now, which I think was great. DC's New 52, Flashpoint Paradox was, I guess, a great event, but then depending on how you look at the New 52, depends on if you thought that was great. But it's one of those things where they figured out the trick. Mash everything into an event, and it prints money. It prints money, and they love the money. There's no money, but I'm smelling virtual money. That's what I'm doing right now. It's the money that's going to appear here. I'm going to make this video into an event and say it spins off into 3 other videos, and I guarantee the hits for those videos will go up. That's what they're doing, because they're scummy, greedy, money-hungry businessmen. And they figured out, and I think the best example of this is Age of Ultron event. And I reviewed Age of Ultron, and I don't want to go on a rant. It's going to last about 10 minutes on just that event alone. But Age of Ultron was a terrible event. And the tie-ins, they said, would be huge and catastrophic, and they would have effect. So you go read the tie-ins, 90% of those had nothing to do with Age of Ultron. It was just a gimmick, like marketing, terrible marketing. And it didn't work out. And that's the really bad part, because they used it just to get sales. And, DC did this bunch, and I mean a bunch, with the whole Flashpoint Paradox, because there was a bunch of stuff happening. It's like, oh, you can follow the main Flashpoint. You go read any of the spin-offs, they were pretty much mediocre, besides like Batman, which was kind of important, but then not really at the end, right? Because everything got reset. Aquaman, which of course you guys know I'm going to fanboy that. That was kind of meh. And then there's, of course, there's like 3 DC events going on like per week. I swear to God. Like, I'm reviewing Matt's comics, and I'm just looking at it. I'm like, there's another event for Green Lantern. Was Superman has another event, like Superman Doomed, for example. That was an event, and the tie-ins useless. Death of the Joker. I would say 70% of those tie-ins were useless. Did nothing to further the story. Catwoman was useless in that. Red Hood issues, useless. So you see what I'm saying here. Events, not exactly something that we should invest so much in, but we do because we have a hope of picking up that one issue that's a great time. Now, how do I feel about so many events? And I think you can gather from what I've been saying earlier that I think they're awful. They're awful for business. They're awful from a standpoint as a reader, as a collector. It's just awful all around because I've gotten to the point where I see an event and it's like tagline, everything changes or earth-shattering event. And I go, of course it is. And I don't want to read it. I really don't. I don't want to read the tie-ins because I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to say everything's going to change, but it's not because I fell for this before. And I think if I could have my way, and God knows I can't, but here's what I would do. I would say I would make a mandate. So I don't even know, like an agreement between companies. Like I don't know. Someone should step in and be like, listen, you're allowed to have an event once every 2 years, but it's got to be meaningful. So imagine going 2 years with normal Spider-Man comics, normal Avenger comics, normal, Batman comic, normal Superman comic. They're not really crossing over with each other or anything, but then suddenly Doomsday appears. It's like, oh crap, in like issue 56 of Batman, issue 56 of Superman, they both see, boom tubes opening all over the place, and then they get together. And then the Justice League comic makes sense. And maybe Batman stories. How did he get to Gotham, out of Gotham to try to help Superman? How did Aquaman deal with him when there's boom tubes opening, in Atlantis? Then you have to read all those, and there's like a month of tie-ins, maybe 1 or 2 issues, and then the event happens across a whole month where every comic ties in. And that would be cool because you get everybody's perspective leading to the mega event. Instead, what you have now is, here's the main event, here it is. It's like 8 issues, 12 issues, whatever it is. And you have these side stories, which if you ignore those, add nothing to it. And a great example I'm going to use is Spider-Verse. Spider-Verse is, I think, a great event overall, but a bunch of the tie-ins, like the main Spider-Verse 1 and 2, are literally 5 or 6 mini-stories jammed into 35 pages. So you have no context of half the characters, and they're completely undeveloped. And that's unfortunate, right? And I think it's lost its steam, and I think it's really kind of, events have actually brought comic books down. And I would go as far as saying that events have actually killed people's spirits in getting into comics. Because, well, I know when people are interested in what I'm talking about, because, they know my job is to review comics and talk about them and all that, people go, oh, what's been happening? I've heard something crazy happen in the comics, like it was on the news. And I'm like, oh yeah, DC Comics rebooted. And they're like, that sounds crazy. What happens? I'm like, so there's Flash and he runs and then changes, but Batman, and they're like, oh, Batman, like Bruce Wayne's dad is Batman, Bruce Wayne's dad. I'm like, yeah, but you got to read the side story. They're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, but if you want further on that story, you got to read this other side story. They just, like, their eyes glaze over, much like mine when Joel starts talking about crap I don't care about. And I'm just like, that's what happens with them. And suddenly they've lost all interest once they hear about it. So, in the end, I want to say events, bad for business. Man, I'm sounding like Triple H. I need to cut this video off before I start firing people or putting jobbers in middle positions and putting Joel on every video.
Hey guys, Joel here reminding you that this video was made possible thanks to our many great patrons. If you want to become a patron and get exclusive comic book cast content, then click the Patreon link below and see how you can help us bring you the content you've come to love. Every little bit helps, and thanks for listening.